Hi, it's Kelly and it's Bob, and we're so excited that you're here with us on Time for Forgiveness. It's such an honor to be with you and spend time together. And if you're a first time listener to Time for Forgiveness, welcome to the family. We're so excited that you're here as well. And we just want to acknowledge that you are taking time out of your day to really grow, expand, open your mind to new ideas, and really learn how to live a life of emotional freedom. That's what we teach here on Time for Forgiveness. And we are so excited to have our guest today. This is a guest who's a speaker, he's a film producer, he is a film director, he is a new author, he's got an amazing book coming out, and we're so excited to have Adam Nimoy with us today. Adam, welcome to the Time for Forgiveness show.
Thank you for having me. That's long and proud.
All right, so we might as well get that out right now. And I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, and Adam, his father is legendary in the Star Trek series, Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock. And for all you Trekkies out there, this is going to be a lot of fun for you getting to hear from Adam. So Adam, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to jump into this. There's so much in your book, and Kelly and I really enjoyed going through your book, The Most Human, Reconciling with My Father, Leonard Nimoy. So Adam, Kelly and I want to touch on a few things here that there were so many things and so much teaching in your book, and you crafted it so beautifully, and how you express your feelings. And Kelly mentioned this before we got on the show. We just want to thank you for your vulnerability and being willing to share. That takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of faith. And so we want to touch on a few things, but I think for our audience too, because we're really focused on transforming lives and helping people actually fix problems like you're doing here with your story, move from really everything you went through. What did you ultimately learn? How are you transcending that today? What do you teach? How are you inspiring people in your own way? Really want to get into those things in our time that we spend together. But Kelly, I'll let you kick off the first question.
Well, what really caught my attention, I mean, there's so many things, obviously, that I learned from the book that I could apply in my own life. But kind of towards the end, you said this profound sentence, was all I had to do was let go of resentment. That's all I had to do. But that is a big idea for a lot of people in life. And I know you've done a lot of work internally on yourself, probably to get to that space to let go of resentment. But how are you able to do that?
Well, the issue of my life was the difficulty I had with my dad. He was, we all have resentments and get upset about people who we feel may have wronged us, whether rightly, sometimes it's imagined and sometimes it's real, my relationship with my dad was the most complicated because I had such an incredible experience being his son because of his success. It was just an amazing life. But he was very difficult as a parent for a number of reasons, which I laid out in the book. And we just had a lot of conflict. We had a lot of awkwardness when I was younger and conflict when I became a teenager and then later on in years. And all of this was kind of made worse by the fact that we had addiction and alcohol issues. My dad was an admitted alcoholic, and I was addicted to marijuana. So we just had a lot of conflict and didn't know how to resolve or let go of or accept each other was really what it comes down to. That's a big point. And it wasn't until I went into 12-step recovery that I found the tools that I needed to let go of some of those resentments to my dad. And, one of the key points that I like to make is that, acceptance, radical acceptance is a big part of 12-step recovery.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we say the serenity prayer at most of the meetings that we're at the conclusion of these meetings. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, like the people in my life who make my life difficult, i.e. my dad, the courage to change the things I can, which is me. It's hard enough changing myself, let alone trying to change someone else. But the key is that acceptance is not necessarily approval. I didn't necessarily approve of some of the things that happened with my dad, but I accepted him for who he was. And once I did that, the game between the two of us changed very quickly.
Adam, and one of the things you said in the book was that you, as you just said, you weren't blameless in the situation, but your bitterness blinded you to any thought of your own contribution. So when you accepted your part in the play out, right? And that's a lot of it is accepting our own responsibility for the things in our lives, because if it's going to change, ultimately it's up to us. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, and again, it's all these are all tools for 12-step recovery. I couldn't have done it without those tools, and I'm still learning them today. I'm 21 years sober. I still am attending meetings.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah,
hmm
thank you. I mean, but I still need reminding. I still need to go to meetings to learn new tools of recovery and new ways to let go of some of these resentments and these character defects. So and step four is all about keeping the focus on yourself. That is, what is your part in it? What are your defects? What are you responsible for? How do you keep your side of the street clean?
right.
And that alone is a very challenging state of affairs just to begin with.
Adam, one of the things moving into your book that really struck me, because I was a child of the 60s and 70s and was a huge fan. And, but you said your dad had trouble expressing his feelings unless it was related or tied to disappointment and anger. And I experienced a lot of that too. And I think, and you said in the book, this was not unusual for children growing up in that era. And I remember my friends. I just think it was just what we lived with back then. I don't think there were many tools for parents, certainly not what there is today, to understand how to express their emotions, both positive and negative. So I appreciate you saying that, because I'm like, yeah, I grew up with Angelo, and that was pretty much the way it was.
But I think a big part in your journey as well was coming to a place that you could appreciate and understand and maybe accept the capacity they had with not having those kind of tools, and
Right.
you were able to let go of that.
Right. Yes, as Adam said, letting go is, and we talk about letting go as the first step as well.
Well, one of the things, and we're talking about, you and your father's relationship, it was a big piece in the story was making amends. And, it was a very courageous act that you made amends with the letter that he had written. And it was something that I think you were even sharing, like, I really didn't think I had the courage or the ability to do it. And I didn't even want to do it, but you did. And everything changed from there. But he also was making his own amends, but it wasn't the way that you maybe had expected it to be. And I think in a lot of people's lives, they have this idea or this expectation of someone, and it's maybe not given or received the way that we expect it. And I'm curious if you'd share with our listeners that how you were able to move towards that, even though it wasn't exactly the way that you thought it should be.
Well, I was told to. Somebody told me to do it. A friend of mine in recovery.
Was that Crystal?
That was no, that was Chris. Chris Kelton, my high school buddy, is the one who told me to make the amends. Yeah,
Okay.
Crystal at the 12 and 12 bookstore is the one who told me that that we experience the most personal growth with people who challenge us the most. They
hmm
give us the opportunity to experience personal growth. And that really was the case with my dad. Look, my dad was had a lot of resentment towards me, and in fact, I talk about in the book the fact that he wrote me a 6-page letter, basically trashing me and why he thought that I was a screw up and the reason why we had so much dysfunction in our relationship. It was my fault. So, my inclination is to write him a 10-page letter back with his character defects
Right.
as to why he's the screw up. That's, look, the thing is, this is the way I'm built as an addict in recovery. When somebody cuts me off on the San Diego freeway, I don't do live long and prosper. I flip them the bird.
The other
That's
live
my
long and
first
prosper, right?
inclination.
Right.
So this is, and that's why I need the program to try to get a grip on my brain so that I get to a more mature thought and then I act accordingly. So when the letter came out, I didn't react to it, and now that's practicing the steps of recovery. It's contrary action, it's restraint of pen and tongue, it's let go and let God, it's don't just do something, sit there. These are all tools from recovery. But it was Chris Kelton, my friend from high school, who incidentally taught me everything I needed to know about drinking and using. He's the guy who said, "No, this is great. You're gonna practice some amends here. Steps 8 and 9. Take the letter, go to your." He's done your inventory for you, not what we do in recovery. We take our own inventory. But he said, "Okay, so your dad screwed up, but you're going to take advantage of this situation. he's laid out for you all the reasons why he thinks what your part in it was. Take the letter to him and make an amends. It's not for him, it's for you
Right.
to
He
let go
opened the
of your
door.
own stuff.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
just opening the door there, cracking the door
yeah,
to see if
yeah.
you'd come through, right? And
Exactly.
but I do
And
want
I
to
didn't want it,
recognize,
but I did it.
right? And but Adam, I do want to recognize because it really, I had to stop, and I don't know if you remember, we were in Florida when I was reading this in your book, Adam, and you said that I don't remember the exact way you worded it, but basically the gist of it was that your dad was in character as Spock from basically Monday morning until Sunday afternoon. It was only Sunday afternoon that he came out of character. Now I don't know if that, but that because he was the Vulcan, right, and his character did not show emotion the way humans show emotion, that you basically grew up all those years in it. I don't know how. I'm just trying to. I was trying to wrap my arms around or my head around that, thinking, now I can get why it was such a struggle for you because you probably were like, who am I even living with here?
Well, the point I'm making in the book is that my dad was very reserved and introspective and very cool and distant to begin with. I just never, he was not a warm and fuzzy parent. And you, as you mentioned, it's sort of, this is a generational thing.
Hmm.
A lot of my friends anecdotally had the same relationship with their dads who grew up during the Depression. My dad didn't have great modeling. His parents were Ukrainian immigrants, in the middle of a major US city of Boston, not really knowing how to raise their kids. They don't go to therapy. They don't have
Right.
counseling. They're not in touch with their emotions. And my dad was that way. The problem was that Spock made things worse because he'd come home with Spock. So on top of my dad, now I'm, Leonard Nimoy, now I'm living with Mr. Spock and Leonard Nimoy, making him even more remote and even more distant. And it's just, growing up, it's just very difficult to just not have that parent to relate to.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to go back really quick to the amend because you were willing and courageous enough because you were told to do it and you did it. But then you accepted his amends, but it didn't come in the capacity that you maybe thought it should. And what
Yeah.
happened in your relationship when you were able to accept it the way that it came?
Well, here's the thing. It's like when you make an amends, you don't, it's like you're not waiting for the other person to make their amends to you. It doesn't work that way. The amends is an end in itself. And I didn't expect my dad to all of a sudden say, all right, you know what? I'm really sorry too for the stuff I pulled. I mean, Leonard just that wasn't in his character really. It was,
Right. It wasn't going to happen.
yeah, it wasn't going to happen. I mean, again, it's a generational thing. He just wasn't the kind of guy who walked around thinking, who do I need to apologize to today? It's just not
Right.
in his character. And it's very difficult when when you're also that successful and people just love and adore you and you hear all day long how terrific you are and you've got your kids saying you're not that terrific. I mean, it's a weird kind of, clash of realities. So I didn't expect that from him at all. And I mean, I did when I first went to an AA meeting with him, but way before I got sober, he took me to an AA meeting and I found out about the ninth step about making amends to people. And it pissed me off that he didn't make one.
Right.
That's for sure. But by the time I made the amends in 2006, and I was a couple of years sober by then, I knew better than to think that, now it's your turn. But what happened was my dad made a living amends because my second wife got very sick from cancer, and my dad was at a different point in his life, and he was interested in helping me, and he did help me. He was my go-to guy. That's what we call living amends. He just showed up for me.
Which was very
Yeah.
beautiful in the story.
I want to
Because,
touch on one thing if you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
I just want to make a comment for our younger audience and maybe that aren't that familiar with the original Star Trek series that went, what, about 7 years, Adam?
The original series, 3 seasons.
Okay. But that, back then, I liken the original Star Trek was on the same par, I think, with the Harry Potter fever, the series. Like that was, for our generation, that was the Harry Potter of that younger generation, and just as you said, the notoriety and just where your dad was in his career and known all over the world, and people loved and adored him, and in this character of Spock, and then how you had to navigate that because again, there's so many challenging points that you brought up in your story. go ahead with your question. But I just want to make that note for the younger generation that's on her. You want to, if you're not familiar with Spock, go check out who that original character was, played by Adam's dad, Leonard.
Well, staying on that, you had said throughout the book, which I thought was really lovely, is even though there was so much confrontation or there was this, strain in the relationship, you were always proud of him, though.
Yes.
Which was...
Well, yeah, this is the point. The challenge of writing the book is to talk about, honestly, some of the conflict I had with my dad, while at the same time being aware that fans don't want to hear their hero being trashed. It's not Mommy Dearest. It's not a blame game book. I'm not airing a bunch of dirty laundry. That's not the point of the book. But I am very honest about some of the things that happen with my dad, and the way I take the curse off of that so that it doesn't look like I'm just trashing him is by saying very clearly, number one, he did not have great modeling from his parents. Number two, when he came to LA with nothing, his whole focus was on survival and supporting the family, not family life, really, not raising the family, but generating cash to support us.
Passion and paying the bills is what you said, right?
Exactly.
Passion and paying the bills.
His whole focus. And the third thing that I say very clearly is that despite the problems I had with him and some of the resentments, I was always proud of him. I mean, that's the cover of the book. That's why I put the picture of him and me on the, where is that book? Because, I was so proud of Star Trek. I mean, I just loved the show before it even aired. I loved what he was doing. I loved seeing my dad in TV shows, popping up all the time. I loved the movies. I loved the accolades were all well deserved. I showed up for him repeatedly, all that stuff to show that, look, I'm trying not, it's not a bitter memoir. This is a celebration of the fact that despite the incredible differences and the space between us, I mean, we were basically estranged for a few years. The miracle of 12-step recovery created a situation where we could reaffirm and reconnect and rebuild our relationship to the point where I was really close to him the last 7 years of his life. It's a celebration of that.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, I like earlier in the conversation you were talking about that, you still are applying these tools, you're still learning. And I think people, especially when we're talking about this concept of forgiveness, maybe have this idea that it has to be perfect and it has to be easy and they're going to be really good at it. But I like that you continually talk about how, we continually are working on ourselves and we're practicing this. It's a practice to remain in it. But you had commented in the book that, in regards to forgiveness, maybe one of the hardest persons to forgive is ourselves. Would that be fair?
Yeah. Well, that is certainly true of addicts and alcoholics. We're very hard on ourselves. And like you say, perfection is really important. If it's look, we have two speeds. I heard somebody say in an AA meeting, and that's fine and F it. Either we're fine or just I don't care. No one cares. I'm just going to go get high. It doesn't matter. That's it. We have two speeds. We're either good or everything has just gone to hell. And, the whole point of my recovery is just finding some equilibrium in my life and some serenity and accepting my defects, my character defects. My mother, I put this in the book, my mother said very clearly, as hard as my father was on me, he was hardest on himself. He was his own worst critic. And I'm that way too. I beat myself up and I just don't do it anymore. I just let it go. And I know I make mistakes, I know I say stuff that I shouldn't have said, and I try to make amends when I think it's necessary. I do apologize when I can't stand making amends, but that's a part of recovery. Step 10, we continue to take our personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admit it. It's a constant process of becoming. I'm not a recovered pothead. I'm a recovering pothead. And as a result of that, I know, and I wasn't planning on this, but I still love to going to meetings and learning and from other people and their struggle because it brings, new light and new focus and new revelations to my own struggle.
But I love that you were vulnerable enough to say, like, you can't stand to do it. That is honest. Like some of the stuff that we get to do and practice, it's not that it's fun and you want to do it, but you know what it's going to bring in your life when you step forward and do it.
Well, there's an old adage that says unsuccessful people, if they don't feel like doing something, they just don't do it. Successful people don't feel like doing it either, but they know they have to do it. And that's what I heard you say, Adam.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
that's true in the writing process that I'm in. I mean, a lot of days I just think what I'm writing is just junk. It's just crap, or I don't feel like doing it, and I push myself to do it. Just to keep the momentum going, just so that I'm producing regularly, just so I have some sense of discipline in whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And the same thing, is true of this book tour I'm on. Is all about my dad because, it's I say yes to everything. I've been all over this country. It's resonating with people. Sometimes I get tired, and sometimes I get lonely, and sometimes I get bored, and sometimes I get, hungry, hangry, we call it, hungry, angry, whatever it is, restless and whatever. But what Leonard would say is just keep going, just
Just
keep
keep
moving.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Leonard's whole thing. It's like, I feel like, oh, that presentation wasn't that good. He'll say, don't worry about screwing up. Don't worry if no one shows up. Just give the best you can and move along. It's very simple. It's a
What
simple
powerful
formula, but
advice. What powerful
I
advice.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we teach that a lot too. I appreciate that, Adam. What would you say, speaking of your dad, what was the number one quality that he possessed that you, looking back now, you admire the most?
Oh, his passion for the work, because otherwise he never would have survived. Never. That his whole mantra was, you got to love what you're doing, follow your heart, follow your bliss. Don't try not to compromise. You may have to make some detours here and there. If Leonard wasn't so determined and passionate about pursuing his career in acting, he never would have survived. This is a kid who came to LA at age 18 with a Boston accent and no money.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean,
So
the
everything
odds of
going for him, in other words.
yeah, everything was going for him. The odds of him succeeding were just of failing were astronomical, and his parents certainly were not rooting for him. This is where my mother came in, because my mother believed in him and his vision as he did, and she never questioned it. Even though we were a hand-to-mouth family,
Hmm.
between 56 when I was born and 66 when Star Trek went on the air, we had nothing. We had nothing. We had no material possessions. It was just we were just getting along day by day. My dad was just hustling to just to catch up, keep up with the bills. So and my mother never wavered in her support of him, and he never wavered in terms of what he wanted to do, his vision, his objective, his passion.
I love that. Is it true that did I read in your book that your dad actually created the Spock character and then sold that character, that vision for that?
No, no, no. It's a no. It's a part of the genius of Gene Roddenberry.
Okay.
Gene created the character, but my dad really, and with the help of some really good direction, my dad filled out that character. I mean, there's a lot of Leonard in Spock, and there's a lot of Spock and Leonard, but there's a lot of his own experience in Spock. So Gene created the framework in which to work. Gene wanted an alien. He wanted with the ears. That was Gene's thing. The mind meld was Gene. But the live long and prosper and the Vulcan, nerve pinch, that's Leonard. So it was really a combination of those two men, creating that character.
I'd love to ask you, when you're talking about people in our lives that possibly cause us discomfort, very frustrating, they're there obviously sometimes to teach us lessons so we can go inward with ourselves. What do you think was the biggest advantage of that somewhat struggle of a relationship? How is it serving you right now?
Well, look, the people who challenge us the most give us the most opportunity for personal growth and emotional maturity. I was told early on by Crystal when I went to that AA bookstore. This is my first year of sobriety. I took a commitment. I did everything you're supposed to do. I had a literature commitment, and I had to show up with books, the big book and other AA literature. And I went to a bookstore to buy some of that stuff. And the woman who ran that store explained to me that I had the emotional development of a 17-year-old boy, which was how old I was when I started smoking pot every day. Now, I was 47 when she told me that. And the first thing that went through my mind is, this is complete BS. She doesn't know me. This is nonsense. And the reason I had that reaction is because I had the emotional development of a 17-year-old boy. So the fact is, it was through the challenge of going through the program and giving myself some time to grow up and practicing the principles of recovery. And the book is very, I kind of lay it out that there are other people who are challenging me to grow up, i.e. my mother, my Jewish mother, who could just drive me insane, my ex-wife, Nancy, and my teenage daughter. I mean, teenage daughters can drive anybody to, drink and drug. And they're just, at least mine was like, I love her. I adored her and I gave her everything. I really wanted to be a good parent to her, but she still gave me hell, and it was through these opportunities that I started to slowly learn how to apply the tools and keep my mouth shut and stop mouthing off or reacting to everything so that when it came time to dealing with my dad, I was ready.
Hmm. That reaction thing is such a big thing that we teach in our coaching, because when we react, we give the person or the event the control. But when we choose to respond, we maintain the control. And that's so important. But I think a lot of this, and we don't have time to get into it, but it's all conditioning and things that we've learned as we grew up. A lot of the behavior patterns that my dad possessed, I adopted those and I acted those out in my early youth, like you really did. And the other thing I want to point out, Adam, is there's this theory behind it that what we see in other people that we don't like, whatever characteristics or qualities, there's some speck of that in our own personality that we're identifying with. And so we need, and you becoming aware of these things and deciding to go to work and do the work on yourself, that's what made the change, right? That old saying, when you change, everything will change for you.
Well, everything did change. I agree with that. That the times when I would think about my dad and be really resentful towards him were just a reflection of the fact that I was not in a good place myself,
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
and I needed just to keep the focus on myself. So that was a really important realization, that I had. But also this whole thing about reacting. That's the key. I don't want other people to create control the situation. I don't want to react to stuff. I don't want to say stuff that I'm going to be sorry for. And the tools I use are simply to just keep my mouth shut before I start talking or before my fingers start typing. And we have another saying in Al-Anon, which is 12 step for people who have a family member with a drug or addiction issue, which is one of my favorite things. And it's called, wait, why am I talking? If
Mm.
no one asks for my opinion, there's no reason for my mouth to be moving. None.
Well, see, Adam, Kelly asks me that all the time. Why are you talking? I'd like, hey, so I think this is fantastic. And I think what we want to wrap up with, and we try to
Well,
wrap
I want to
up
wrap
this.
up with something.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm kind of considering that unforgiveness is somewhat of an addiction. It's like this chronic pattern of this behavior that is bringing a negative consequence in our life. And I feel that most of it is avoidance in a way because it's this uncomfortable conversation. And it appears that you have moved through the idea of this is uncomfortable, unthinkable, these conversations. Have those become easier for you in regards to, setting boundaries, let's say, and moving forward with relationships in your life right now?
Yeah, well, listen, holding on to resentments, which many of us do, and I still do occasionally too, but we like to say in 12-step recovery, it is the same as drinking poison and
Mm.
expecting the other person to die. It is just so harmful to yourself and of such a waste of time. And, in terms of practicing the principles, yeah, I'm a double winner. I'm in AA and I'm in Al-Anon, and a lot of it's just about setting boundaries. Look, my dad, it's not like we could sit down and talk the whole thing out. No, not at all. In fact, there were some subjects that I just was determined we were going to avoid. There were a couple of times when my dad wanted to go back and look at the wreckage of our past, and I would say to him the following, look, I don't remember the details of what happened, which is a lie. I do remember the details, but I'm so sorry if I hurt you or offended you in some way. And I'm so grateful that we're on the right track now. And we have such a close and loving relationship. And I'm grateful for that. Let's just, if we can we just stay focused on that? And he'd go, yeah, okay, you're right. I'm willing to do that. So it's just,
Mm.
yeah, it's about setting boundaries. You can't air everything. You can't, it's just impossible. My dad couldn't look back at all the stuff that happened and all the things that I wasn't going to relay all that stuff to him. I just had to let go and move on.
Mm.
All right, you
Let
couldn't
go and
change
let
it
God
anyway.
would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the end result for me.
so Adam, this idea of forgiveness, the concept, makes sense to most people, except when we have to actually do it ourselves. So we're going to end with, in a sentence or two, what is your definition of forgiveness in your life now, based on everything you've been through? What would you tell our audience?
I guess it's just, look, we live in a very challenging world right now on this planet. There's a lot of stuff going on that is really difficult. just to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Life on life's terms is very complicated. We're all recovering from something. You don't have to be an addict or an alcoholic to use the tools of recovery to find some serenity in your life. Whether you're recovering from a failed marriage or the loss of a loved one or some physical infirmity or some natural disaster. I mean, I live in LA. We're going to be recovering from these fires for many years to come. Everybody is in some form of recovery, and the tools of recovery are simply a way for us to live life on life's terms. It's challenging out there. And if you want to find some sense of serenity, some sense of spirituality while being on the short time we're on this planet, then I would think that people could benefit. Everybody can benefit from the tools of recovery. You can go to Al-Anon. You don't have to be, you don't have to identify as an addict or an alcoholic. They're just ways to help us learn to live with one another and accept one another and love one another.
I love that. All right. So, Adam, last thing, where can our audience access your book, The Most Human?
The Most Human, they can access it it's right here. It's right here.
When is it going to be available to the general
It's
public?
released.
I know, where can they get it? That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here it is. It's right here. I do have it.
Okay.
I love the picture.
Yeah, thank you. That was taken in July of 1966, 6 weeks before the series even aired.
Oh, that's
really
cool.
cool.
Yeah,
Love that.
I'm the first.
Brings back a lot
Becky,
of memories.
and let the cosplay begin. Okay.
There it
My
is.
book we published it in June of last year. There's a paperback copy coming out in May or June of this year. You can find it at please support your local bookstore. If you can find it, ask them if they have it or if they can order it. I had the Village Well here in Culver City that I support. I'm really big on neighborhood bookstores. They need our help. They need our support. Or you can find it online. If you want to find out where I'm going to be, my website, adamnimoy.com. All my social handles are on there. All my schedule is on there, and you can contact me through that website.
All right. Fantastic. Well, you all just heard from the one, the only, the Adam Nimoy. Adam, thanks. Again, we appreciate your generosity of time and your heart and being on here with Time for Forgiveness. If you all out there are enjoying what we're doing, please share this podcast with your family and friends. We're obviously wanting to grow our community here at TFF. And anything else from you, honey, before we sign off?
I just want to thank you again. I mean, it really takes vulnerability and courage to share details. We all have a story, but this story is one that can change people's lives. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, you guys. And as always, live long and prosper.
Okay, I'd love to do it, Adam, but I can't. I'm just not
There we
that.
go.
joyful.
Ellie,
There you
There
go.
we
She's
go.
got it.
Yeah, I got it.
All
There we go.
right. All right,
Okay.
Adam. Best you in your ventures moving forward. Much success.
Thank you so much
prosperity.
for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we just wrapped our conversation with the amazing Adam Nimoy. He's the son of Leonard Nimoy. And again, we're just so excited that you're here and honored to have you a part of our family. And if you know anybody out there that can benefit from our podcast and what we're doing and the message we're sharing, please share it with your family and friends. We obviously want to grow our community here at Time for Forgiveness. And don't forget about our World Summit coming up in May 30th and 31st in Kansas City. You can go to our website at timeforforgiveness.org and sign up there. So again, for Bob and Kelly, we'll see you next time on Time for Forgiveness.